Welcome to the ParentU podcast, where we want to frame the challenges of the teenage years for parents to see these years as a great work of sanctification in their lives and have a deeper understanding of each other and, most importantly, grow together in the grace of Jesus Christ. I'm Mark Long, and 5 years ago, I approached the leadership at Oak Mountain Presbyterian Church in Birmingham, Alabama, about a calling to pursue the hearts of parents and families with teenagers and to equip them to be proactive rather than reactive in their parenting. As parents, we try to do our best to teach our kids right from wrong. As they become teenagers, we try to teach them how to obey the law. However, it is impossible to ensure that our teenagers, they'll never come in contact with illegal substances or temptations that may create serious consequences for themselves and their families. Several years ago, I attended an event and heard about this group called Compact 2020, now known as Compact. It's a division within the Shelby County Sheriff's Office established to assist families across Shelby County by providing them with up-to-date information and available resources to guide teenagers back to a substance-free, happy, healthy lifestyle without entering the juvenile justice system. I was so impressed with their mission that I asked them to be part of some of the ministry programs we had here at OMPC through ParentU. And today, I've invited representatives from Compact to join us to share some of the trends they are facing in prevention and education amongst teenagers in 2024, specifically here in Shelby County. Gentlemen, welcome to this ParentU podcast. Thank you for joining me. Today we have Deputy Austin Brown and Deputy Ash Lightner. What I'd like for you to do is just introduce yourselves, and you can look at each other to say when it's your turn or whatever, and then just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move on.
Deputy Brown, Shelby County Sheriff's Office. I've been working at Shelby County Sheriff's Office for 5 years now. I've been in Compact since September of last year. Prior to coming to Compact, I was a school resource officer at Chelsea High School, and then prior to that, I worked on patrol.
Great.
Hey, Mark. My name's Ash Lightner. I'm an investigator with the DA's office here in Shelby County, assigned to Compact. I took that position in January of this year. Prior to that, I was a federal agent for 22 and a half years, retired from that job. Prior to that, for about 6.5, 7 years, I was a state trooper in Georgia before working with local law enforcement in the Lightner County Sheriff's Office there in Georgia.
Thank you very much for being here. Like I said before, what I'd like to do is just start out with what is Compact? And so can y'all address that a little bit for us?
I can address that for us. So Compact is basically a group of investigators from Shelby County from different municipalities. Our primary purpose is to assist youth and their families with up-to-date information, resources that are provided regarding a substance-free, healthy lifestyle without entering the juvenile justice system. Our main goal is prevention, intervention, education of students. And it's basically a collaboration put together by the Shelby County Sheriff, the Shelby County DA's office, and the Shelby County Manager.
Our mission statement in ParentU lines up really well with Compact because our desire is the same. Now, I will say my desire doesn't go quite as far because I'm hoping it doesn't ever, go to what we call the juvenile justice system. I'm not sitting there, I don't want to trying to work with parents and go, we need to keep them out of juvie. That's not my goal. Even though I have worked with parents who go, how can I keep my son or my daughter out of juvie? And being able to talk to parents and go, there is a resource given that's prepared from our county here in Shelby County that can help parents intervene to keep it from happening. Now, is it foolproof? No. But at least it is something that's put into play. So if I can ask you, how have you seen Compact evolve throughout these years here in Shelby County?
So Compact started in 2016. And when it first started, it was in response to the opioid crisis. The Shelby County leaders saw that as an issue, wanted to get ahead of it, wanted to stop it. The way it evolved is after a couple of years, they started seeing that the opioid epidemic, substance abuse, misuse, and addiction was really starting at younger ages. It was starting in the 6th grade, 7th grade. And at that point, they realized, hey, we have to focus on our youth at this point. Let's evolve this. Let's change this. Focus on our youth. And that's when it became prevention, intervention, and education. With prevention and education really going hand in hand and working with youth and trying to keep them out of that substance abuse and that addiction. I had worked in law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement 32 years. It's always been on the criminal side, the criminal aspect. And I love what I did. It was very rewarding in what I did. This is a different kind of reward, though. It's being able to help. You know, you always feel like you're trying to help, but at the same time, you're arresting people or you're putting them in jail. With this, it's not about that. It's about having compassion for youth. Youth make mistakes. We all make mistakes, you know, but getting them on that right track, mentoring them, having a relationship with them. I'm new to the unit. One thing we did this summer is we had camp journeys for sixth graders. And you'd have sixth graders come in. I had about 30 students come in at Oak Mountain, Helena, Chelsea, and having them come in and just building relationships with them. And my old job, it was about arresting and operational plans and risk mitigation. And I had a former coworker, friend of mine, call me one day and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And with the old job, it was very stressful. With this job, I said, "Well, today we've given some presentations, but we've been playing 9 square. I've been the all-time quarterback for a football team, you know, for sixth graders." And I love every minute of it because you're building those relationships with the youth and with the students to the point that they will trust you then and can talk to you, and you can try to get them on that right road or keep them from going down that road.
Things are different, you know, for youth than they were for me, obviously, because I'm very old. But even for y'all, they're the same temptations. You know, you have alcohol, you have drugs and stuff. But now there are other substances that come into play for teenagers. So what reason I wanted to bring y'all in is just that you could share with the parents what are some of those old things that are now being brought up as in new ways. What major substances are you seeing crop up these days?
Yeah, so I would say marijuana. It was still there. It's still there. Just different forms of it. Now we're seeing like Delta 8. You're seeing edibles. You're seeing like THC energy drinks. Mushrooms were really big last year in the schools. Between marijuana and shrooms, psychedelics, those were the biggest things in the schools. And it really doesn't matter if it's a public school, private school, home school. They're going to have access to it. The alcohol is still big. I say the biggest thing that we've had to deal with in the last, I'll say the end of school year last year, and even up until this school year, is the open house parties. Kids inviting friends over, having alcohol, having vapes, and it just turns into a bigger problem where the police are called, and now someone's getting arrested. And 90% of the time is going to be the parent that's there. And that's one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with right now is really the open house parties.
Yeah, why do you think parents are okaying this type of?
I think they have the mindset of, if you do it here and I have your keys and I know all your friends are here, I know you're going to be safe under my eye, but you're just enabling it, and it's just going to turn into a bigger problem.
Yeah, I've heard parents, and again, I'm not trying to judge anyone. You know, having 5 of my own, you know, but I've heard of parents with that mindset that, well, if they're going to drink, I'd rather them drink with me, and I think there's some shortcomings in that. I remember working in youth ministry, and these kids would ask me, well, "What's the big deal about alcohol, drinking alcohol?" And I would, you know, as a pastor, I would take them to the verses that would share about getting drunk. Yeah, but what if you don't get drunk? And then I said, okay, here's the number one reason you should not be drinking. It's against the law. Now, therein is the rub, because some families have a low view of the law. And so when it comes to stuff like house parties, I could see where if you have a low view, you're going to communicate that to your kids, and then they're going to act. What other things are y'all seeing out there in Shelby County?
I would say not as common in the schools. when I was in SRO, there was instance where cocaine was involved, where a student was selling cocaine. Supposedly it was cocaine. It was transferred to another student, and that student was caught, and it was tested. It was not cocaine. It was actually methamphetamine and fentanyl.
Wow.
So that was a really big eye opener for me because I wasn't expecting to see something like that in a school. But like I said, it really doesn't matter if it's public school, private school, home school. It's all out there. It's accessible to our young adults.
You know, we have a school right across the street, and you know, their goals are similar to ours. They want to guide and direct students and keep them from those things, but there are those constant opportunities for exposure. It just happens over and over again. Maybe deployed in different ways, but the exposure is still there. So if you were talking with parents and you have all this knowledge, you have this experience, you know, what would be some of the early signs that parents need to be aware of to help them recognize, you know, substance issues with their teenagers?
I would say changing behaviors. If you see your kids changing behaviors, their activities, what they're doing, if they love football, but all of a sudden they're not playing football, or they love piano or you know, playing in a band, and they're getting out of that, distancing themselves from the family, decline in their grades, and what you're seeing with that, just changing socially and who they're hanging out with, just differences. You know your family, you know your kids, and they're going to change, they're going to evolve over time. But when you start seeing a lot of different things happening and distancing from the family, I think that's really what you're looking at. Having those healthy relationships with your children to be able to monitor that and see that when something's happening with them. If you don't know them, you're not going to be able to catch that. You're not going to be able to see it. But having that relationship, as I said before, seeing that change in behavior, noticing what they're doing, having those conversations with them, having those open conversations, and being willing to do that. Being willing to ask them questions that may be a little bit uncomfortable, but if you've established that bond, you can. That would be the best tip off to me. I don't know if Austin, if you have anything on that.
Yeah, I would say detachment, getting away from your friends and family that actually truly care about you. I don't think any young adult is going to be wanting to be around their family drunk or high.
Yeah.
So I would think that detachment would be the biggest key.
You know, that's something I want to encourage parents to look for. And what would that look like to be detached? Because on one hand, you want them to grow up to be independent, great citizens. But on the other side, there's something that has happened that's caused them to be detached in a different way. You know, working in a church, I can put it in these kind of terms. If they grow up in the church, they hear about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they hear about the 10 Commandments and laws and all sorts of stuff. But for us, you know, if they claim to know Christ, I have to think that some of that detachment is because they feel guilty. Mm-hmm. And so what they do is they withdraw and they become more quiet. And speaking of that, tell me how Compact can intervene if parents have to go down that road with their kid of, you know, first it was detachment and then it was rebellion and then it became whatever. How can Compact help families these days?
Yeah, so I would say reaching out to us is the first step. We work with Central Alabama Wellness. We work with a licensed counselor there where they come into our office and they look for the underlying thing that has caused them to rebel, vape, whatever they're doing, and see if it's anxiety, depression, anything like that would cause that particular behavior. So I would just say using us as a resource would be the number one step. And our licensed counselor, her name is Stormy. The kids are very, very comfortable with her. And I think that's the first step is just reaching out, asking for that help.
I've seen how important and significant that is for teenagers to feel safe to go, I'm going to share this, hoping that sharing will lead to the next step.
Yes.
A lot of times they're afraid of sharing because they know the next step with their parents. And the reality is most parents are going, but that's not the next step in my mind.
Right.
I love you. I want to help you. I want to encourage you. When should parents call Compact?
When they feel like they need help.
Yeah.
So many times, I mean, you build we talked about building, it's about relationships. And it's about knowing your children and your youth. And you're building that relationship with them. You know where they are. And you can see sometimes when they're going down a wayward path, when they're detaching, as we talked about earlier. And a lot of times that's things you can handle at home. You can have those conversations with them. But when you feel like you can't handle it at home, when you feel like you need help, Compact, if you're seeing that substance abuse, that addiction, mental health issues, Compact is there for you to call. We're there to help. That's the reason we were put into play in Shelby County, is to be a resource. And we can help by mentoring or getting them to the right resources and having good, healthy interactions with the youth.
Yeah, the question was, when should parents call? But the big question is, when do they normally call? They normally call when there's some kind of crisis. I mean, I would assume that's an assumption on my part. I'm not, just from experience, ParentU here at Oak Mountain has several offerings that help parents be proactive. And it's the same thing with Compact. I see you're trying to be proactive, building relationships. I mean, just, rules without relationship leads to rebellion. I learned that from Young Life. And it's true, because, rules are important. But the people that have to enforce those rules, if you don't have a relationship with them, it's just a buzzkill to them. That's the one thing that drew me about Compact, was just the heart behind it. There really is a desire to help parents and to help teenagers. Not invasive in certain ways. It can become invasive if it gets caught up in the juvenile system. But before, it's just building relationships. And in the long term, that's what teenagers are looking for. I do want to say this, that I believe God has instituted every government for the good of all people. God has done this. He's instituted this. Every ruling authority that exists has been established by God. Romans 13 talks about this all through the chapter. It's because human government is a derived authority. In other words, it's come from God. God's established these things. Those in authority are described as the servants of God and ministers of God, believe it or not. We may not see that in our culture a lot because of different behavior, but in the end, God is the one who's established this. So those who reject governmental authority reject God's authority. And I know, again, that when you start talking like that, usually they go, "Pastor, you're starting to meddle now." Well, the truth is, if God is doing these things, He's doing it for our good. So those in power hold their power because of God, and God can give it, and God can remove it. So such derived and limited authority is to be exercised for the good of all people. Gentlemen, it has been a privilege to sit here with you guys. I'm grateful for Compact, and I'm grateful for you guys. Thank you very much. ParentU is a ministry of Oak Mountain Presbyterian Church. I'm Pastor Mark Long, and thanks for listening.